Senator Lindsey Graham, who is one of the biggest Ukraine war hawks possible, you know, if this guy was in charge, God forbid, we would already be in World War III.
Yeah,
like, there's no doubt, whether it's
literally
with,
true.
you know, Russia or whether it's with regard to Iran, like any number of World War IIIs, Lindsey Graham is constantly looking to get us into. He made some comments, though, that were, I guess, very honest about the real reasons why we care so much about Ukraine. And spoiler alert, has nothing to do with democracy or with their sovereignty or human rights. Let's take a listen to how Senator Graham explains why we should be super committed to Ukraine.
They're sitting on $10 to $12 trillion of critical minerals in Ukraine. They could be the richest country in all of Europe. I don't want to give that money and those assets to Putin to share with China. If we help Ukraine now, they can become the best business partner we ever dreamed of. That $10 to $12 trillion of critical mineral assets could be used by Ukraine and the West, not given to Putin and China. This is a very big deal how Ukraine ends. Let's help them win a war we can't afford to lose. Let's find a solution to this war. But they're sitting on a gold mine to give Putin $10 or $12 trillion of critical minerals that he will share with China is ridiculous.
Saagar, curious your thoughts on this one.
Well, first of all, you're not supposed to say stuff like that ever since the World War I and the Great War, because that's when literal territorial conquest went out of style. And if you embrace that, then you are Putin. That's basically Putinism. Putinism is we have the right as a great power to seize this territory under whatever democratic means because we can and for for economic purposes.
Because we want that lithium or whatever.
This is part of the thing. That is so patently ludicrous. People used to say that about Afghanistan too. They're like, well, theoretically, there's X amount. It's like, yeah, what? The Soviet Union and the Russians ruled Ukraine for what, hundreds of years? If they were gonna extract any thing of true value like that, they would have done it already. And more so, if that remained true in the modern era, then the Ukrainian government would have done it already if it was actually gonna be possible. The reason why it's not possible is that Ukraine is a stratified country along ethnic lines with deep corruption and which basically has huge internal contradictions that go against each other that don't make it a functioning nation state, just like Afghanistan. Does it sound familiar? So underlying, resources or whatever, who cares about that? It's about the functioning apparatus above that's actually, able to bring that stuff to market, to be able to trade it. There's a reason they're known for grain and have been known for grain for hundreds of years, okay?
How much do you think that this is reflective of other elites thinking, like in the Biden administration, et cetera? I would say
it's very difficult because I actually don't think there's a better case for U.S. involvement in Iraq and specifically in the Middle East on oil than there is for this. Because like I just said, nothing he's saying is even proven or actually true in terms of its deliverables. I think a lot of it just comes down to Putin bad. If anything, like I said, he is probably exhibiting more of a Putin-esque Russian mindset about why we need Ukraine. But regardless, what is he saying there? He said, we need to quote unquote help Ukraine to turn it into a mineral vassal state that can work as our electric battery vehicle manufacturing hub. Someone should go and ask Ukrainians. Someone should go ask the Ukrainian grandpa who's 62 years old and had 1 week of basic training on the front line, whether that is why he is fighting there. And be like, hey, is that the future that you want for yourself? He's like, wait, I thought I was fighting for self-determination. It's like, hey, buddy, we got some news for you about what you're really doing that. I mean, this is straight up out of World War I, out of those secret treaties of the Bolsheviks published. That's a view into this mindset.
The Washington Post did do an article a little while back just to confirm the mineral deposits that Lindsey Graham was talking to. I'll put this up on the screen. They say in the Ukraine war, a battle for the nation's mineral and energy wealth. And they frame it from the other direction of not well, this is why we should be here so that we can turn them into our lithium vassal state, as Saagar put it. But that's what the Russians are really after. And in fact, a lot of the mineral wealth is in eastern Ukraine, the area that is most in dispute. It's also the area that is the most ethnically Russian.
The one that actually speaks Russian, you mean?
Yeah. Right. So they say Ukraine harbors some of the world's largest reserves of titanium and iron ore, fields fields of untapped lithium and massive deposits of coal. Collectively, they're worth tens of trillions of dollars. The lion's share of those coal deposits, which for decades have powered Ukraine's critical steel industry, are concentrated in the east, where Moscow has made the most inroads. That puts them in Russian hands, along with significant amounts of other valuable energy and mineral deposits used for everything from aircraft parts to smartphones. Ukraine would also lose myriad other reserves, including stores of natural gas, oil, rare earth minerals, essential for certain high-tech components that could hamper Western Europe's search for alternatives to imports from Russia and China. Ukraine is widely known as an agricultural powerhouse, but as a raw material motherlode, it's home to 117 of the 120 most widely used minerals and metals and a major source of fossil fuels. So, I mean, I do think that there are not only this, but there are other business interests in Ukraine. We've seen the way that like private equity has been very excited about the idea of how much money we're going to pay them basically for Ukraine reconstruction. And obviously the longer the war goes on and the more devastation there is, the more opportunity there is for those reconstruction dollars to flow into their coffers. So, you know, and obviously you have the military-industrial complex that are always chomping at the bit for a new war and, you know, what that means for their bottom line. So this is an important part of the story of how we end up constantly engaged in these different wars, whether it's directly or proxy wars like this one, and why they seem to go on forever, because you have a lot of people who are either currently profiting from the war or looking forward to future profits from that war.
That is a much more accurate and frankly, I think correct economic case that can really be made here is why do you think Blackstone, JP Morgan, and all these other people are holding summits about rebuilding Ukraine? Because the American taxpayer is going to pay for it. They're going to finance all the fake bonds and all this other stuff. And we're going to be the guarantor of all of their debt. It's straight up disaster capitalism. It's happened time and time and time again. And then we'll create these fake state-owned companies in Ukraine who, they just happen to become filthy rich oligarchs too, who end up, you know, basically being some of the corrupt people on the planet. But it's all good because America's going to get its 20%. And by America, I mean the banks, not anybody who is like a normal average working person and or the politicians who will then go work for the banks. That's, if there is an economic case to be made for why U.S. elites care about Ukraine, that's what it actually is. We're all dressed up by this BS around minerals or democracy. But I mean, at the very least with Graham, this is why if anything, it is more evil it is straight up actually out of World War I to have imperial powers dress up their conquest of territory in some grand fight against fascism or Kaiserism, and then a treaty comes out and it's like, oh, well, actually behind the scenes we were splitting up, you know, all the remains of Eastern Europe or the Istanbul and Constantinople or whatever. It's like, no, that's what it's really all about. It probably has always been that way, but, you know, with very few exceptions, but you're not supposed to say this stuff out loud. And that's why it's so gross.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say which I prefer. Like,
I mean, I do prefer this, I will say. I want honesty more than anything, because at least we can talk about it for real.
Exactly, because it's confusing to the American public if it's dressed up in values that they really believe in, right? That they actually earnestly care about, right? And that they actually earnestly are concerned about the Ukrainian people and what this has done to their lives and their futures, et cetera. And so it confuses them about what our involvement is actually about. I do think it'd be better if you had, you know, Joe Biden and others who were talking nakedly about their like wealth extraction plans out of this war, because then we could have honestly put it to the American people of like, okay, well, is this worth it to you? Is this like what your priority actually is? Cloaking it in humanitarian values while the true end is just, you know, feeding the profit machine is grotesque. So I guess thank you, Lindsey Graham, for your rare honesty, I guess. But your worldview is gross.
That's right. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent